welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. I'm not sure if all of our intro music actually played, but I do apologize for that.
It did.
We've been we, okay. I didn't hear it on my side. Today we have Roselle who will be sharing her journey of breaking into cybersecurity leadership, sharing her advice, and also having Renee, a podcast. So excited!
We're
I
back
will be
together again.
I will be dropping off, but I will let these two lovely ladies continue. And love to hear about this story, Roselle. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for the invite.
So, Roselle, it's exciting to have you on. I was able to take a look at your background on LinkedIn, and you have done some amazing work in the industry. I would love to have you start off by just telling us your career path. Like, how did you get to the point where you are today?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. So I started out in cybersecurity in 2004. I saw a job opening for a computer crime investigator, and I had zero background in any of the skills needed for it, and a lot of it was computer forensics. And I just convinced the hiring manager that I'd learn on the job, and I have an engineering degree from Princeton, and I just said, "Look, I can learn quickly." And the hiring manager was willing to give me a try. And part of what I agreed to was I will get these certifications while I'm on the job, which I did. So I want to say 600 something in the world for getting an ENCE, which is a computer forensic certification. So I was on that early. I had my CISSP in, I don't know, 2005, 2006. And so once I had those credentials, that helped with getting jobs in the future. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing the computer forensics. It was basically detective work on a computer, and I had those tech chops at the time. Like, the skills have atrophied at this point, but I really enjoyed being really down in the weeds with the technical work. And I did computer forensics in a couple different places, and eventually moved to the Department of Homeland Security in the division that was then called US CERT. Now it's CISA. And there I was leading malware and forensic analysis teams. I was also the product owner for a threat intelligence platform that we built internally. And this was before that term was even coined in the industry. I just had this crazy idea that all of the analysis that the different teams were doing should be in one spot so we could correlate. And I was able to bring it from my crazy idea to a product that was being used by the analysts internally and about 50 departments and agencies. And so that was a great experience in learning how to bring a product concept into fruition. And then from there, I moved to the Executive Office of the President. And this was during the Obama administration. And that was an amazing opportunity. So I was always trying to look at the strategic picture of how we could improve, how we could optimize. But I was never too far from what was happening on the tactical level. And during the government shutdown, I actually had to go back to doing analysis work on the night shift, no less, because half my team was furloughed. So that was a fantastic experience, nerve-wracking, and we were 24/7. I was always checking in on the night shift when I wasn't working on it. But all of those years of being on the operational side of cybersecurity gave me a great understanding of what was working, what wasn't, where there were technology gaps. And that's what prompted me to switch gears to becoming an entrepreneur, because I said, hey, there is a technology gap. I'm going to fill it. And I already had the experience from the Department of Homeland Security of taking a concept and bringing it to a working product. And so I brought that knowledge base with me when I switched to becoming an entrepreneur. And my first startup was called Uplevel Security. I was a co-founder and the original CEO. That company was in the space of basically combining threat intel platform, incident management, and early SOAR capabilities all under one roof. And if you look at how the industry has evolved, all the players in that space have that three-pronged diagram. But I had that in my deck in 2014. So it was a little early to the game on that. And that company was eventually sold to McAfee. And then I took some time between startups to go work for a venture capital firm as an entrepreneur in residence. And I was working at Analytical Ventures to understand the other side of the table for venture-backed startups. But when you have the entrepreneurial bug, you can't really shake it. And so I knew I was going to go back to starting something else. And that's when I went to Key Caliber. And again, I was reaching back to my operational days and thinking about what the challenges were that I had at the time. And one of them was around a very fundamental concept of knowing what we had, what was most important, what was most at risk, these fundamental areas where they're the identify stage of NIST CSF. And I always look at NIST CSF as a pyramid, not a linear set of boxes, where if you have that identify phase squared away, you know what you have, you know what the critical assets are, you know the baseline of the risks to it, then you can build the other layers on top of it and you have this strong foundation. But if you don't even have that, you don't have the denominator, you don't even know what you're protecting, and then you're just really fighting an uphill battle. And so I wanted to address that, and I wanted to move us past all the manual tasks that were just commonplace. So the standard process for identifying what critical assets are, it's literally asking folks in different business units, well, what do you think is most important? And that's just riddled with problems. I mean, you get errors and omissions because people are human, and then you get ulterior motives also. So we've heard all these stories about folks saying that people would say something is a critical asset because they just wanted more funding for their division. Or they would say something is not a critical asset because they didn't want to deal with extra security controls. And so I just wanted to get past all of that and move to the 21st century where it's data driven and using machine learning. And so that's what we do fundamentally is we produce a whole asset inventory, and then for each asset compute an impact score so you know which are the critical assets. We use that impact score and compute a risk score. And we also look at how the asset's connected within the environment, and we look at the security controls on it. So you have this state of your risk and security posture, and now you know where to go from there. And we have lots of actionable insight where you have your starting point, you know this is my current state, and you know how you can start to fix it and improve. And we started basically when the pandemic began, so perfect timing, not stressful at all. And it's been a really exciting ride. I have an amazing team, and the product has evolved and grown in lots of amazing ways, and it's all very exciting and a lot of work.
Sounds exciting. What a career that you've had so far. I mean, one of the things I was taking notes as you were chatting, and the first thing I picked up on was when you said it was like being a detective for tech and forensics. It's so funny. I was meeting with a lady, actually a school board member in my community yesterday, and talking about exposure to security for the youth, for high school students. And, we started talking about AI and security and how there's still this lack of exposure, and kids don't fully understand the career path, or that there is a career path, or what it is. And so, the way you coined a detective for technology, I'm totally taking that. Totally using that one.
Yeah.
I'm taking that one. And then, so my first question is, I mean, I have a lot of questions in regards to leadership, but I'm so fascinated by your career. When you were at the executive office of the president, like, what was your responsibility? How did that work? Did you have a team? What were you responsible for there?
Yeah, so we had a 24/7 team, and we were responsible for defending the network used by the White House and the rest of the agency.
Okay.
And so, as
So
you
when
can,
you said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as you can imagine, there's lots going on in
Right.
that type of an environment, and it's a high stakes environment for sure.
Of course. So when you said you had to go back to being an analyst, being up at night 24/7, was it in that capacity when you were in that role?
So with government shutdowns, if you're considered a non-essential staff, then
Right.
you don't work. And
Right.
so many members of my team, who I thought were absolutely essential, were furloughed.
Mm,
And so in that case, we still had alerts come in. We still had daily security
right.
operations that needed to be handled. And with the analysts furloughed, it had to be done by somebody.
Somebody. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
so yeah, so you pinch in where you need to make sure you get the job done. But you couldn't just let it just sit.
Right.
That 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 shutdown lasted about 3 weeks, over 3 weeks. So you couldn't
Right.
just sit there and wait. Okay, just let this pile up and let a potential attack just fester. It's not an
Right.
option. Just not an option.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I am going to pivot a little bit more into, becoming a leader and becoming, in your case, an entrepreneur. And I totally get when you said, I see the problem, I want to solve this problem. And then you got the bug. It's like, I want to solve the next problem. So I get it. What made you say, I'm not going to solve the problem or try to solve it from within, that I'm going to, go out and try to solve it on the outside, like create a company, become a product, or create a product to solve the problem?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I saw it as a problem that we had, but we weren't the only ones who had it. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was an industry-wide issue. So one of the beauties of working for the Department of Homeland Security in what was then US CERT, now CISA, is you have this perch where you see what's happening throughout government, throughout critical infrastructure. And so I had an understanding of what was a challenge across the board. And on top of that, when I was at the executive office of the president, I was having tons of conversations because my first attempt was, all right, we have this problem. Let me talk to my peers and see what solution they're using to solve it. And I was getting a lot of answers that were like in the same boat of what we were doing and what we were struggling with. And so I knew that it was something that is beyond just the walls of our environment. And that's why I decided, this is a real problem the industry has, and the reality is I'm a mission driven founder. I mean, I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years because I believe very strongly in the mission. And so when I saw this industry wide issue, I just had the audacity to say, okay, no, this needs to be solved. I'm going to solve it.
Right.
And so, and it all progressed from there. But I knew that it was beyond just a problem that we were having. We weren't unique to it.
Right. Now, when you were in the roles that you were in, working at what's now CISA and the other roles prior, it looks like you became, you continue with continuous growth. So you went from like an individual contributor, an analyst, and even talking about your experience, where the analysts or the non-essential workers, that reported to you were unavailable, and then you had to jump in. So what made you pivot or go from, individual contributor to leader, like when you stepped into that first leadership role?
Yeah, so that really happened at Department of Homeland Security, and I distinctly remember the point in time where I basically had to make the decision: was I going to go down more of a managerial path, or was I going to just double down on the technical path?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tough decision. It was really a tough decision because I I enjoy doing the technical work, and I have a technical brain. And when you're doing technical work, you're fighting with your software and your hardware. You're not fighting with people. And that's very different. Because at the end of the day, you could turn the computer off and on again, and half the time the problem goes away. Not that way with people. Not at all. And so it was a challenging decision because I knew that I would lose my technical skills, but the upside of it to me was I'd have more impact on the vision and on the strategy and on the long-term value that could be provided. And that was really what just tipped the scale in favor of going down the managerial road.
What would you say to folks that are sitting right there in that moment? Like, with you making a decision saying, okay, I want to be more of the visionary, I want to do this. Like, were there things that you asked yourself when you were going through that process, that pivotal moment? Because there are some people who say, nope, I want to stay, I'll be the principal engineer, the principal architect, like go down that really, really technical path and just play with the technology. Stay away from the human problems, stick with
Yeah.
the technology problems.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different. And I would
I
say,
love that.
it all comes down to your values, like, what and your interests and your strengths, and whether you want to play to your strengths or maybe develop new skills. If the people side of it is not your forte, and it's different for everybody because you internally know your value system and
Mm-hmm.
what is most important to you. And I
Right.
certainly know lots of really talented people that well into their career, no thought of being a manager. Just love being an individual contributor where they can just be heads down, get in as technical as they want, nerding out all day, and they love it.
Right.
And I get that. I mean, I was almost at that point, the point of making that decision. So I completely get it.
Right.
But then the other side of it, there are people that they want to start to be able to influence change within the organization, and it can sometimes be done as an individual contributor, but it's certainly more challenging.
Yeah.
And so it really comes down to personal preference.
You talked about influence. How important would you consider influence as a skill, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I think it never hurts. Um, as someone who definitely would not consider it a strength, I think you can still manage without it. Um, but if you are going to move into more of a managerial role, you do have to become more attuned to what's happening around you. When you're an individual contributor, you can just be heads down and just focus your day on hardware, software. But if you're going to be at a managerial level, then you have to understand and be able to read the room. So you have to know if people are unhappy with something, if there is an obstacle that's going to prevent you from getting to what you want to do. You have to be able to look at, all right, well, here's this roadblock right in front of me. What are the ways around it, over it, through it?
Mhm.
And that requires having more of a holistic view of the environment.
Yeah.
And then the next step of, once you have, it's sort of similar with security, where you have the lay of the land, then you can start to develop a strategy to deal with that. And some of the strategy could be influence if you have that tool in your tool set.
Right.
But it first starts with being able to understand the macro view of it.
Right.
And that was something that I learned, the hard way with everything.
I think we all do at some point. I
Yeah.
mean, individual contributor or not, right? Some of the things that you talked about in terms of influence, because a lot of times, even as an individual contributor, you have to influence without authority.
True.
Or you're working with your partners, your other folks outside of security or outside of IT with the business, and doing that kind of influence. So I think it works. It definitely is across the board, having to have that skill, but absolutely necessary for leadership. What would you say some of the critical skills? So we know that influence is a big one. Any other critical skills that people would be looking for? What do you think that a leader should have? Like you started, I think what's awesome about your background is not only did you lead within huge government organizations, but then stepped over to entrepreneurship. So you saw the combination of leading like the big team, the government in the government space, and then pivot over to startup world, which I know is almost like night and day when it comes to how fast you're moving. Well, you know what? You were at the White House, so that was pretty fast. But like, the different red tape, so to speak, that you would have on one end that, you can pretty much do whatever you want, more or less, right? As an entrepreneur. So I'm curious about the different skills that you would say you would need as an entrepreneurial leader versus even like a leader in a more corporate stable, so to speak, or setting.
Yeah, you're right. It is night and day in many ways. Totally different. I mean, with being an entrepreneur, one of the most critical traits is resilience, because there is just something bad happening all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And the number of obstacles that are thrown in front of you just is endless, absolutely endless. So being resilient, being thick-skinned and able to deal with rejection, that's absolutely essential, because it's happening all the time. When you're talking to investors, when you're talking to customers, when you're talking to employees that you want to hire, there's just constant rejection. And then there's always this tenuous situation of something looks great, it looks like it's going to come through, and then the last minute it doesn't. And that can have such an impact on your direction, depending on how big it was and how badly it doesn't come through. So I would say that's really number one trait is resilience and optimism that you're going to get through it, and just also confidence in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to hear a million people telling you there's no chance. And they'll tell you in all sorts of ways, some very subtly and some very directly, but the message is the same. And so having that thick skin, but also that confidence to know they don't have the insight that you have. And this still has legs despite all of the people that are the naysayers.
Right.
And so those are some of the really key traits for being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a large environment, then it's definitely very different. I mean, it's a chess game in a different way. So entrepreneurship is also a chess game, but it's a faster chess game, and there's just more that could move at any given time. When you're in a large organization, you have to recognize that it's all baby steps, because nothing moves quickly. That's just not the way it works. And you're going to get these setbacks also, and you're still going to have to pivot direction and change course and be thoughtful about how you proceed and have that strategy, but the pace is going to be very different.
Right.
And often if you try to come in with this brazen approach of I'm going to start to change everything, that backfires in a large environment, because there are going to always be people who don't want their boat rocked. And if you're coming in and talking about some crazy change, then that could be threatening to them. Whether it really is or not, it could just appear that way.
Right.
And so you have to be
Like,
very...
who is this new person coming to tell me I've been doing this for 10 years?
Exactly. Who does she think she is coming in here like that? And
Right.
that's not happening. Yeah. So you have to be very political in some way.
Right. Awesome. Well, Roselle, this has been so refreshing to speak to you and hear your varying backgrounds. You know, where you've the you know, how you got into cybersecurity, where you started, you know, and where you are right now, and the current position and the current company you're in now. That you co-founded this one too, right? Or you're the founder.
Solo founder on this one.
Solo founder. So awesome. Even better, right? Do it by yourself. I love it. So we would love to have you potentially come back if you were willing to. But would love to, you know, wrap up. And if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to say before we close out, that would be great.
I would say to anyone who wants to get into the industry, just start applying for jobs. Be strategic about making sure that your resume matches the description for the job, but just start applying. I know lots of folks that feel, oh, I need to have a master's degree, or I need to do this, I need to do that before I could start even applying. Just apply now. Like, don't be the one to reject yourself. Let someone else reject you. And that always needs to start with you just putting it out there, trying, and just being willing to give it a shot, even if the success rate doesn't seem high to you in the beginning.
Great advice. Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Roselle, for coming on. And we are going to close out. So have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.